Uneasy lies the head that wears a crown, wrote Shakespeare in Henry IV, Part 2, but you don't even have to be wearing the crown to be at risk of losing your head. Just being a little too close to inheriting it can be enough to get you killed prematurely. Being part of the British royal family isn't all jewels, palaces, and waving from fancy cars, and it won't protect you from a fatal illness or a sharp sword or an arrow in the eye. While some kings have killed their way to the crown, others have paved the way for someone else by dying unexpectedly. Deaths in the British royal family affect the victims' relatives, send a wave of grief and sometimes relief through the nation, and occasionally change the course of history. Featuring betrayals, beheadings, and lots of people with the same names, these are the most tragic deaths in the British royal family. Hello and welcome to Royal Scandal. Please do well to like, subscribe, comment and turn on the notification bell so as not to miss out on any news updates. Number 1. Charles I was executed by his subjects. We can't know how Henry IX would have performed as king, but he couldn't have done a worse job than his brother, who was crowned Charles I in 1625. Charles believed that the monarch was answerable only to God. And speaking of God, the BBC reports that Charles's high Anglican religion looked too close to Catholicism for comfort to his mainly Protestant subjects. It didn't help that his wife was Catholic. Incapable of compromise, Charles kept dissolving Parliament rather than bend to its demands, forcing through taxes on his own. Finally, when he tried to raise another tax to fight the Scots and an army to fight the Irish, and to have multiple members of Parliament arrested, civil war broke out. The war between the Cavaliers, Team Charles, and the Roundheads, Team Parliament, lasted between 1642 and 1646, when Charles surrendered. However, after he escaped from prison and started and lost another civil war, a group of radical parliamentarians, led by Oliver Cromwell, tried him for treason and sentenced him to death. Charles spent his last days at St. James's Palace in London with his two youngest children, whom he tried to comfort. On January 30, 1649, he donned a black cloak and walked through St. James's Park to the banqueting house at Whitehall, where he became the only British monarch to be executed for treason. Number 2. The death of Princess Charlotte Augusta of Wales devastated the public. After 11 monarchy-free years, Parliament invited Charles's son to become Charles II in 1660. Succession was a muddle for the next 5 decades, but in 1714, James I's great-grandson became the first of many King Georges to take the English throne. According to the BBC, George IV became king in 1820 but started ruling his region in 1811, when his father George III's mental health issues prevented him from acting as king. The Prince Regent was reckless and extravagant. His most popular contribution to the country was his daughter, Princess Charlotte Augusta of Wales, born in 1796. Like her parents, Charlotte had a scandalous love life. She had affairs with an army captain and a couple of lowly princes, among others. In 1814, she was forced into an engagement with William, hereditary Prince of Orange, but a year later she broke centuries of royal protocol by calling it off. Instead, Charlotte persuaded her father to let her marry Prince Leopold of Saxe-Coburg in 1816. The couple was very popular with the public, and became even more so when it was announced in early 1817 that Charlotte was pregnant. But sadly, that November, the princess died, aged 21, 5 hours after giving birth to a stillborn child. Her parents, husband, and the nation went into deep mourning. The funds for the marker on her tomb were raised by the public in tribute to their would-be queen. Number 3. Queen Victoria blamed her heir for Prince Albert's death. In 1830, now heirless George IV's throne passed to his brother, who became William IV. William had 10 children but no legitimate heirs, so the throne went to his 18-year-old niece, Victoria, in 1837. Victoria was pressured to marry but she was against the idea until October 1839, when she fell mutually in love with her first cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg in Gotha. Victoria, who outranked Albert, proposed 5 days later. He said yes. On February 10, 1840, Albert and Victoria married in a huge ceremony that set the fashion for lavish royal weddings and for white wedding dresses. Victoria wrote of her wedding, "This was the happiest day of my life. according to Vanity Fair. Her relationship with Albert remained passionate. They had 9 children, even though she hated being pregnant but also argumentative when their strong personalities clashed. In 1861, Albert, who had been in poor health, visited their wayward oldest son and heir, Albert Edward, known as Bertie, to admonish him for a scandalous relationship. During the trip, Albert caught typhoid fever. He died 3 weeks later. Queen Victoria was devastated. She wore mourning black for the rest of her life, which lasted 40 more years, and became reclusive. A notoriously cold mother, she blamed Bertie, writing, "I never can or shall look at him without a shudder." Number 4. Prince John was shunned by his family. Bertie became Edward VII in 1901, passing the throne to his son, George V, in 1910. George and his wife Mary of Teck had 6 children, whom the king ruled over as a military-like figure while the queen showed little interest. George was highly critical and impatient. He forced another George, their second oldest son, to wear painful leg braces to correct his knock-knees, and shouted at him about his speech impediment. However, Prince John, the couple's youngest child, arguably suffered most. Known today as the Lost Prince, John was epileptic and possibly also autistic. According to the LA Times, he couldn't spell, draw a straight line, or complete simple intelligence tests. He was sweet-natured, and tended to take things literally. John's parents decided that he was unfit to be associated with the royals, and sent him to live in a cottage on the Sandringham estate, where the royal family's Christmas takes place, in the care of a loving nurse. John wrote affectionate letters to his family, but rarely saw them. In 1919, aged 13, he died of a severe seizure. According to the Telegraph, John's oldest brother, the future Edward VIII, the Nazi supporter who abdicated the throne in 1936, wrote that the animal had died, and resented having to pretend to mourn him. Number 5. The sudden death of Princess Diana brought the nation to a standstill. George VI succeeded his brother when the latter abdicated in 1936, passing the throne to his daughter, Elizabeth II, upon his death in 1956. Elizabeth II married Philip, then Prince of Greece and Denmark and now the Duke of Edinburgh, in 1947, and in 1948 their oldest son Charles was born. Charles's great love was Camilla Shand, whom he met in 1971. But according to Time, the royal family considered her an unsuitable match, since she didn't have a title and was reportedly not a virgin. Instead, in July 1981, 32-year-old Charles married Diana Spencer, 19-year-old daughter of the Earl of Spencer, who became the Princess of Wales. Unpretentious and warm, Diana was extremely popular with the public, which made Charles jealous. The marriage was troubled from the start, and the couple's divorce was finalized in 1996, at which point Diana was ejected from the royal family. 1 year and 3 days later, Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris. The nation went into mourning, laying a sea of flowers outside the gates of Buckingham Palace. The Queen was criticized for her seemingly cold response. Under public pressure, she decided to allow Diana a royal funeral. She also conceded to having a Union flag flown at half-mast at Buckingham Palace, which had only ever flown the royal standard to indicate the Queen's presence. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe.